Hi, I'm Eric Johnson here at the Owen Graduate School of Management at Vanderbilt, and I'm here today with John Tamny. John is the political economy editor for Forbes and the author of the new book, Popular Economics. Great to have you here today, John.
Thanks for having me.
Well, you know, your book has so many interesting facets and plumbs into some of these ideas of inequality, and we've watched this spring some really interesting events, you know, GM reinstating their profit sharing after disappearing from the downturn, Aetna coming in and putting a floor of $18 an hour on their hourly wage. Same thing with Walmart coming in and adding $2 to their minimum wage. Is this good business?
It's great business, and it's a reminder of the beauty of economic growth, whereby societies rise and people are getting richer, because what happens is it becomes too expensive not to pay your workers really well or above the market wage. One of those stories I use in my book is Henry Ford. There's this persistent myth that he paid above market wages to his employees in order to give them the means to buy his cars. That had nothing to do with it. He was experiencing 370% annual turnover. It became too expensive for him not to pay his workers a proper wage because he was going to lose them. So what you see here is, with the economy slightly recovering, we're getting companies competing again for workers. That means wages will rise.
Yeah, so you write about economic inequality in your book. Why do you see inequality as a positive attribute of the U.S. economy?
Because it's the process whereby the lifestyle gap shrinks. Look at this phone I have. Back in 1983, the first one ever was brick-sized, and it cost you $4,000 to buy, literally. It was a half hour of battery life. Not to mention that if you had the temerity to call from Nashville to Memphis a couple times a month, it was going to cost you hundreds of dollars. People made billions making it so that anyone of all income classes could own a phone that 10 years ago even the richest people in the world could not own. And so that's all inequality is the process whereby the lifestyle gap between the rich and poor shrinks. But the other big thing is, you've got to remember, and we know this, an economy is just a collection of individuals. How does it hurt the individual to do the work that maximizes their talents, that makes them most unequal relative to others? That's about progress. That's what we all hope for. We'll be happy if we can achieve inequality relative to others. So over in a broad economy, you can see why it's so wonderful. It involves Steve Jobs, or the late Steve Jobs, Jeff Bezos. People doing what they're best at makes us all better off.
So you pose this interesting question in the title of your book, you know, Popular Economics, but there's kind of a colon there, and then an interesting question, you know, what can the Rolling Stones or Downton Abbey or LeBron James teach us about economics? Can you give us a short answer? What can they teach us?
They can teach you everything. The big myth out there is that somehow Americans don't understand economics. They know it intimately. If you want to understand why high tax rates can be so detrimental to growth, look at the Rolling Stones. They suffered an 83% in the 1970s rate in England. So what did they do? They went and left. They made their album in the south of France. Rich people are mobile. They can avoid taxation. But the people who would have helped produce the album, the sound engineers, the caterers, the drivers, all those, they weren't as mobile. So the poor and middle class suffer high tax rates. Downton Abbey is a reminder of what happens. It's a story ultimately about trying to preserve an estate from the government. And so you see what happens when government takes estates, when it removes wealth from the private sector. We lose the ESPNs of the world, all these businesses that are a creation of huge concentrations of wealth. Getty Oil having created, the Getty Oil Trust having created ESPN. And LeBron James is just a reminder that we do best when we do the work that we do best and then outsource the things that we're not as good at to others. LeBron James could be an NFL player, but if he did, it would be at the expense of his being the best, highest paid basketball player on earth. Well, what do we do as individuals? We outsource all sorts of things to others. I outsource the making of my clothes, where I eat, the apartment I live in, and that gives me time to be a writer and an editor. If I tried to do all those things, I would be immensely poor. And so when we think about LeBron James, he is an example of the wonders of free trade, that if we don't adapt it, we will be poor as a result.
That's great. Well, you know, one of the things that is neat about being at Owen is we have a lot of executives come through every year, and I always ask them a little bit about leadership, and I'm curious, in your perch at Forbes and watching lots and lots of leaders in different places, what's a leadership lesson that you'd like to share with us?
I think the best lesson is to thine own self be true. If you are not yourself, people will know it. People see through fakery all the time. If you're a hands-on Pete Carroll kind of players, coach, leader, great, do that. Pete Carroll could not be a mean Bill Parcells style coach. If you're Bill Parcells, to thine own self be true also. I think that's the best leadership. If not, people see that you're being fake and they don't want to follow you.
Well, John, thanks so much for being here at Owen today.
Thank you very much, Eric.